And every single seat was taken. And I thought to myself, holy God, this is the grim reaper of our time. This is the health crisis. How the hell could so many people have a variation of the same disease? And why isn't someone telling us what we're doing wrong? So, hi, everybody, and welcome to Too Young to Be Old, the podcast from the former Gene Queen of QVC-HSN, but now I am the proud host of, and by the way, title of my second book. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. If you had a major disease or condition and you knew you could heal yourself rather than go through all the agony of chemotherapy and heavy duty steroids and drugs, would you? I know I would. And today, our guest, Jason Teichner, says not only would you, but you should. He is a certified holistic health practitioner and nutritionist. He's got a personal journey to share about curing himself, cure thyself, self healing. Jason, I am fascinated. Thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you, Diane. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on. I really appreciate it.
This is great. So, we're going to get into all the alternatives I had when I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. But let's get to you first and foremost, and how you came to the conclusion that practically any drug in a country that is in huge health crisis and always sees some kind of outside medicine as a stopgap, not necessarily the cure. How did you come to the belief of self-healing? Tell us your journey.
Absolutely, Diane. Yeah, that's a really great question. First of all, most of your watchers slash listeners probably know this. A lot of this is being done to us, so that's the first thing. But so back in 2000, I was diagnosed with Hodgkins lymphoma, and I didn't know at the time how to heal myself naturally. I was studying a little bit of nutrition at the time, but really didn't know enough. And so I did go through the traditional treatment at that time, chemotherapy, radiation. And what ended up happening was a couple years after I stopped the treatment, I started getting these very, very strange symptoms. So I was barely able to get out of bed because I was so tired, extremely dizzy, lightheaded, major digestive symptoms. I couldn't tolerate more than 2 bites of food at a time.
Ooh.
And this went on for I'd say about 5 years before I kind of realized what was going on. And I did research and research and research and research and research. And I finally figured out that after going to one particular doctor, now, most doctors, as we know, are kind of useless when it comes to natural healing. And if your blood work is normal, they say, oh, you're fine, or oh, it's all in your head, that kind of thing. So I was getting all of those things from these doctors. And finally, I went to one doctor that said, you know what? It sounds like your cells maybe just haven't detoxified yet from the chemo, mainly the chemo, a little bit the radiation, but mainly the chemo. And I said, huh. And so I started doing more research on that. And that eventually brought me to the conclusion that he was right. And then my cells just had never recovered from the chemotherapy. They were not repairing themselves.
Wow.
So yeah, so then again, more research, more research, more research, talking to naturopaths, talking to holistic health practitioners, and finally figured out how to heal and how to get my cells to repair from being so toxic. And so that's when I came to the conclusion that all illness is toxicity. Now,
Ha.
yeah. Now, what type of toxicity is another story. That is my job to help my clients figure out what exactly is toxifying their body, whether it's the foods that, the GMO, all the GMOs we have in the foods. But see, what happens is when our cells are toxic, we're allowing everything to come in and the body cannot metabolize it out. So that's what happens. So these foods that are bad for us, our bodies aren't able to metabolize them out. If let's say we're exposed to mold at a place that we live for several years, let's say we get Lyme disease, which is actually a lot more common than people think. Let's say we get heavy metals in our system from our water, from our foods, from our soil, things like that. Well, our body is not going to metabolize those things out of our system, out of our cells, if our cells are toxic. Then that creates inflammation, that creates a pH imbalance in our body, acidity. So we have to first detoxify before we can heal. That way, then our body can get rid of those other things. We can then take in nutrients, because if our cells are full of toxins, we're also not absorbing nutrients. So we could be taking vitamins, we could be taking supplements, herbs, minerals, whatever. Our body is not going to absorb them into our cells because our cells are full of toxins. So the first thing we need to do is detoxify. So that's what I discovered. That's what I did. And then I was completely better. My digestive symptoms went away, dizziness, lightheadedness, fatigue, able to tolerate food now. So everything that I mentioned, I just got better and better and better over time. And then while I was doing that, I decided, you know what? Why not become a certified health practitioner? So I went
Yeah.
to nutritionist, holistic
Help
health practitioner, as
others.
you mentioned, and hypnotherapist as well. So, because I wanted to address the mental issues in people as well. So,
Now, when I had breast cancer, um, they gave me a ton of steroids. I never got depressed. I had energy, but nobody ever explained it to me that every time I came in to get a chemo treatment, they'd say, "Oh, you put on another 5 pounds. Oh, your blood pressure is through the roof." And it never occurred to me that steroids were making me hold in so much water weight
yeah,
that the pressure of the water was so pressing against everything in my everything was just skyrocketing that was bad, and nobody ever explained it to me. And I honestly think it took a good 3 years to get rid of all those steroids from my system, because no one ever told me how to do it. They definitely, at the hospital I went to, Mount Sinai in New York, had a diet that just made sense. Don't smoke cigarettes, don't drink heavy grain alcohol, don't eat red meat, da la 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 la. But nobody ever said, you know what? You're poisoned by that chemotherapy and those steroids. And here's what you need to do if you want to recover faster. No one ever said a word to me. And in the end, Jason, I came to not have a ton of respect for classical medicine, because they create through their choices, and thank you God, I was saved. They create through their choices maybe a cure, but also a million physical problems, but never explain them. Whether that's because they don't want to take responsibility for it, I don't know, or they don't make money off explaining it away, because maybe what you need to do is drink a gallon of water a day. But nobody ever said a word to me. Now, right after I got diagnosed, I had to come to my TV studio and do my last set of shows. A couple of people at the TV studio that I was close to were very Christian, and they just wanted me to pray. And everyone was crying, crying, crying. Why? Because they felt chemotherapy was going to kill me, not the cancer. So they said, you should just be drinking green juice. That's all you need to do. No chemotherapy. No, that's not going to happen. And they said, you should go to the Philippines and go to a medicine man who can reach inside your body without surgery and pull out all the cancer. No, that was not going to happen. But the bottom line was there were really no choices. And all the women I know who were diagnosed and did that green juice thing, they all passed away. So,
Yeah.
how is it, and what route did you take navigating lymphoma, and how does that affect how you eat and drink and live today? What advice can you give us, or what
Yeah.
window?
Definitely. So keep your toxic load down. And I tell people how to do that. Um, and keep that inflammation,
How
which
do
is
you do that? How do you do that?
you got so basically you got to keep your cells clean by number one, keeping your immune system strong. And there's different ways to do that. When you keep your immune system strong, I'll give you a couple examples. Colostrum, medicinal mushrooms. So, those are good ways to keep your immune system strong. And what it does is it allows your cells to repair and then function at the level they're supposed to function at. So, it doesn't allow disease to come in. So those are the things we need to do. We also need to make sure, of course, that we're hydrated. And by hydrated, I don't just mean drink a bunch of regular water, tap water, things like that. Don't do that. So what I use is I use the zero water. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, by the way, but I use the zero water pitcher, and it's a filter. And what it does, the reason it's called zero water is it gets rid of all of the impurities in the water. So it brings the parts per million count to zero. So it will filter everything. Now, when we do that, we've got to replace our trace minerals, which is important anyway. But we don't want any impurities in the water. Obviously, chlorine is a huge issue. Obviously, fluoride is a huge issue right now in the water. And as well as, I won't even mention all the things fluoride does to us. But yeah, go ahead,
Now,
Dan.
I just have to tell you this because it flips me out. So one of my problems all my life, and it's inherited, it's in genetics, is dental and dental work. So I'm at the
Yeah.
dentist. He's almost 70. We're talking, so we're contemporaries. And he said, you notice that there's no young patients sitting in the waiting room. And I said, yeah. Why? He said, pretty soon dentists will be out of business because if you are from the era where fluoride was okayed and put into water. Because I remember as a kid living in a town in Southern California where they wouldn't allow fluoride. There was a big fight about the evil of fluoride.
Hmm.
He said younger patients who have lived with fluoride all their lives don't have cavities, basically. There is no dentistry going forward, actually, when all the baby boomers die off. But you're saying fluoride is actually dangerous. In what way?
It's horrible. Yeah, I mean, it may help with cavities, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't cause all kinds of other issues. So,
Like what?
first of all, it's a neurotoxin. It will destroy our brain.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
that's yeah. So that's what it does more than anything else. People talk about the pineal gland, right? Which
Yeah,
sits,
pineal gland.
yeah.
Exactly.
So what it does is it clogs the pineal gland, and then it basically makes us dumb. And so that makes us easier to control. But it also fluoride is a heavy metal. So it will get into our system and it will overtake our cells. And then, like I said, it's one of those types of toxins that won't allow other things to assimilate in the
Oh,
body. So
oh.
yeah, it's fluoride is bad. Any
And here
kind,
I have a dentist who's saying, oh, I feel so sorry for you that you grew up without fluoride.
mm,
What a shame. there we are with, and I love my dentist. Don't get me wrong, one of the best dentists ever in history. But there you have the classic medical community defending itself
Oh,
and
yeah.
believing in itself and not ever wanting to talk about any of the side effects.
Yeah,
I would never
exactly.
knew that until today.
Yeah, yeah. So with fluoride, obviously I use fluoride-free toothpaste. I use fluoride, toothpaste without fluoride.
Okay,
So
well, I'm going to from now on.
yeah. So what I do is I use charcoal-based toothpaste. So they have charcoal in which binds to bacteria and pulls it out. And then it also has essential oils in it, which are just as effective, if not more so, of killing bacteria in the mouth. And you're not going to get the side effects. Now, if you brush with fluoride and you swallow a little tiny bit here and there, is it going to hurt you? No. But a lot of people don't realize how much of the toothpaste they're actually swallowing. So that's the problem. So yeah, definitely toothpaste with no fluoride. Um, and make sure that your water is filtered out of fluoride. You have a heavy metal filter, and even the zero water filter is the least expensive thing to get that's going to filter out heavy metals. So you're talking
And
about
it's a,
30 bucks.
yeah, it's a key for everything. Now, I want to ask you something. You talk about unveiling the health crisis in America. And when I think about it, I could think about obesity, mental health, all forms of cancer, and basically the challenges of growing older and the drugs that the medical community says can ease that or take care of it. And God knows what side effects those have. But
Yeah.
what I want to hear your definition of the health crisis in America.
Well, the health crisis, it starts with the foods that we eat. It starts with the genetically modified organisms that we consume, the GMOs. So that is the biggest culprit of the health crisis from a
Why?
diet standpoint. So our
Why?
body, yeah, so our body doesn't know what to do with them. It's foreign to our body. So what
Oh,
happens when we eat genetically modified foods, our body doesn't recognize it as real food. So it will start to attack itself, think that the GMOs are actually a toxin, are actually an illness, and it'll start to attack. Our immune system will start to attack, and then that eventually leads to the autoimmune conditions. Because when our immune system
wow.
attacks each other, that's what leads to that's the definition of an autoimmune condition, autoimmune
So
disorder.
give a couple of examples just for the audience. I
So
can think of psoriasis as an autoimmune.
psoriasis, yes. Yeah, psoriasis is considered autoimmune, and actually that's a liver problem because the skin is connected to the liver, by the way. But lupus is a systemic autoimmune condition that people get. It's more common in women than men. But Crohn's, as far as the digestive problems, that the digestive autoimmune kind of stuff that we get from eating GMOs, Crohn's is huge. Colitis, ulcerative colitis is huge. Diverticulosis, which eventually turns into diverticulitis if you don't handle it. And so basically our small intestine can get inflamed, our large intestine can get inflamed, which is our colon, and then it causes all those types of issues. And then all of a sudden we have all these digestive problems and we don't know why.
So let's take something like I know a couple of people that have and had Crohn's disease,
Mhm.
and they were on, God, I don't know how many drugs
Yeah.
and how deeply it affected their lives in the most negative of ways. What, how would you back that down, that condition down, and how would you guide personally one of your patients, one of your health seekers to make a more livable life for themselves? What would be your succinct advice?
So if you're talking about Crohn's, there's a few things. Obviously, you need to get rid of the toxicity in the colon. You also have to reduce the inflammation, right? So I do aloe vera juice, and it's a very specific form. Um,
Ooh.
we can also do freeze dried, a very specific type of freeze dried aloe that really gets in there and creates more oxygen in the cells, therefore reducing the inflammation, and oxygen actually heals. So a lot of people don't realize that if we get in the right type of oxygen, then we can actually heal pretty much everything because
Is that a hyperbaric chamber, or
hyperbaric
does that?
helps. Hyperbaric helps, but I'm talking about this type of oxygen that gets more internal. So we can do that with things like liquid chlorophyll. We can do that with aloe vera. We can also go and get hydrogen peroxide, food grade hydrogen peroxide therapy, which is in the form of IV. We can also get IV ozone therapy. So we can go to a naturopath that does the IV ozone therapy. We can do it that way. That massively increases ozone. We can even do, I don't know how much we want to talk about this, but we can also go to somebody that does colonics, which is colon hydrotherapy, and adds
Yeah.
ozone to that. So we can get ozone in our rectum, and we can actually heal this very, very, very quickly. So it's you've got to get oxygen into the colon to get rid of these colon conditions.
So I'm going to
And
ask
increasing the immune
two
system
questions.
too.
I'm going to ask two questions. One is going to be, how does the ordinary Joe on the street, like that would be me, because I'm not educated in medical, uh, how do we find these solutions? But I'm going to ask a major question, because to me, the health crisis, and I will tell a little story with this, of our times is cancer. So I went to a cancer clinic for women only, the Dubin Clinic, fantastic drop-in clinic within Mount Sinai Hospital on Fifth Avenue, New York City. One day, I'm going to get my chemo, and there's smoke pouring out everywhere at Mount Sinai. And there was a fire in the basement, and that's where obviously you get your radiation treatments and coincidentally your chemo. So I'm used to being in a very contained, beautiful space. It's all women, it's really civilized, and they make it as pleasant as they can for the chemo. Now they say, no, you cannot miss a chemo treatment. Go round the corner to like the Icon Center, which is this huge hospital building. Go up to the eighth floor, it's a cancer floor. They'll figure out how to take care of you. Well, Jason, I went from a waiting room for chemo that maybe housed at maximum 40 people to a waiting room for cancer patients treatment, and it was all kinds of cancers the size of two professional football fields. And I can't believe these balloons. I don't know what they're doing here, but okay. It's hello balloons. It's past New Year's Eve. Please stop coming. Um, and I every single seat was taken, and I thought to myself, "Holy God, this is the grim reaper of our time. This is the health crisis. How the hell could so many people have a variation of the same disease? And why isn't someone telling us what we're doing wrong?" So, your statement to me is you honestly believe that the right diet and treatment without chemo, without radiation, could have saved my life and caused less damage to me, because I was definitely damaged by chemo for sure. You're
Yes,
saying yes.
absolutely, 100%. And I've helped clients heal themselves from cancer. And and it's actually a lot more simple than you think. Now, I'm not saying if your doctor tells you to do chemo, disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
but yeah, it's so healing cancer is a lot more simple than people think. Now, it's not as easy as, like you said, taking a green drink or going to somebody that claims to pull stuff out, energetically or whatever. But no, you have to. There's a lot of things you have to do. That you have to address cancer from all angles and all of the causes of why you got it in the first place, and then attack the cancer specifically when you have it. So yes, there are many things you have to do, but I have a protocol depending on what type of cancer a person has. I have a protocol where I can help them to heal from. Um, just naturally. And yes, it is very possible. You've got to get rid of the toxicity, obviously, the inflammation, the acidity in the body, and you've got to get rid of any microorganisms, which in some cases that has a lot to do with why somebody got cancer too. Not to mention the foods, we talked about that, but there could have been microorganisms contributing to it as well. A lot of times it's a dormant virus or parasites, things like that. So we address all of those things. I help figure out what caused the problem in the first place with my clients. And then I set up a protocol to help them heal based on that.
So I had the most common kind of breast cancer, which I think many women listeners will relate to, estrogen based.
Hmm.
And I basically caused my own cancer by wanting to look younger and feel more energetic much longer than I should have taken hormone replacement therapy. So I took it for many, many years. And the doctor said, you flooded your system with hormones. Pretty easy. So, what would you recommend for somebody like me? I got 6 months of chemo, the strongest chemo for the longest amount of time my body could take it.
Hmm.
I got radiation, but because I had all my lymph nodes taken out, I was numb. So, it was never torture. Yeah, it burned me, but I had no nerve endings. So, it meant nothing to me. Um, then I got a ton of steroids and I had a ton of water weight. I gained during cancer treatment 30 pounds, over 30 pounds. What would you, if I was just coming out of treatment, I got chemo first, then I got radiation. What would you tell me? Just I realize how surface this is, but
Yeah.
still it's your thing.
Yeah.
What would you tell me? What would be your 5 top tips to me to
Well,
make myself feel
we need to do a detox. That's the first thing,
how do you
obviously.
do that?
So with something like detoxing from chemo, there are a lot of agents that bind to those toxins and pull them out of the body. So modified citrus pectin is just one example that will go in and actually bind to things, pull them out. Activated charcoal is another example of something that will go in and bind to toxins and pull it out. We also have to just get rid of stuff, rid of stuff in the body and the toxins. Irish moss does that. Fulvic acid does that. Humic acid does that. So it's high levels of iodine for a very short period of time. Will do that. So it's just a matter of what's toxifying the body, where your symptoms are. That way, I know what part of your body has the most concentrated form of toxins. So we need to know what things go in and pull toxins out the best from those parts of the body. The other thing we need to do is we need to raise the pH in the body. We can do that with green foods. We can do that with, spirulina, chlorella, wheatgrass, barley grass, things like that. We can do a really high quality green foods powder that's going to get rid of acidity in the body. It's going to raise the pH, alkalize the body, right? So we can get our body back to the
I'm
pH
actually
level.
writing this down. 5 years later, I
Yeah.
feel I still am living out the results.
And what I like about green foods too is they also increase oxygen, which is what we want to do because of the chlorophyll in there. They also increase nutrients to the body and get nutrients into the cells. They have a lot of trace minerals and trace vitamins. So we've got to get our nutrients back into our body. And a lot of times we have to do that in a liquid form at first because our body is so toxic and so inflamed, our cells cannot absorb the nutrients, as I mentioned before. So sometimes clients have to do my clients have to do this in liquid form for a while until we get their acidity down, until we get their inflammation down, until we get those toxins out of the cells. So then the cells can then absorb those nutrients. Then we can go to, whole foods. Then we can go to, supplements that are either powders as opposed to liquid. So, and then,
So,
yeah.
oh, yeah, go ahead, and then I
Oh,
have
it's
one
Yeah, I was
big
just gonna
question.
say, and then there's only certain products that you want. There's only certain brands that make the high quality products. Most supplements out there will do you no good, and a lot of them will do you harm because they have all kinds of artificial chemicals in them. They have all kinds of fillers in them. So, a lot of my job is to let people know where to get these products,
Yeah.
and yeah, and not just get some random form of whatever, magnesium or calcium or vitamin A or vitamin C or you name it. Not just go to the store and get some random form that's going to have all these chemicals in them as well, that where it's going to do a lot worse than good.
Yeah, this seems really at once pretty linear and clear to navigate, but then again, there's all the trickiness of the right products. And the 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 one big question I would ask you, and it really did not involve me because I don't eat any fast foods at all and actually never have. Um, what would you say is the damage done if you have a condition that you're suffering from, whether it's cancer or it's psoriasis or whatever it is, but it's fairly chronic, and as uh, you don't believe that diet has anything to do with that particular segment of your health. What do you believe fast foods, how do they harm you when you're in that vulnerable state?
Well, it's all the chemicals, first of all. It's all the chemicals in the fast foods. Um, Fast foods are not what they say they are. In other words, you go to a fast food restaurant and you get a hamburger, for example. Only a certain percentage of that is going to actually be real meat. The rest is going to be chemicals. The rest is going to be artificial flavors, artificial colors. It's going to be byproducts. It's going to be certain types of toxins like graphene oxide and glyphosate, which is in all our GMO foods. So, and what that does is that quickly fills up the cells with toxins. So eventually you're going to get inflammation, which is going to create autoimmune issue. Your cells are going to turn bad. They're going to turn, into the cancer cells. The cancer cells you already have in your body are going to get activated. So yeah, it's not going to be good. It's not real food basically, or it's a percentage of real food and the rest is not real food.
Yeah, it was interesting, but one of the beauties of where I went to get chemo was, your own private room and fresh white orchids in the room. And they really had a female mentality. And you also got a foot or a shoulder massage all during chemo. Really primo. They served lunch, but they said, Diane, you never eat the lunch. Oh my God, Jason. It was a big white bread bun with something in between, like highly processed cheese and bologna or something. And I was just,
Literally and
every time I
figuratively,
saw it,
baloney. Yeah.
I thought to myself, I think I'll wait until I get home. I don't think that looks right. So, really and truly, we all, audience, we need a Jason in our life. Jason Teichner, you are like this wealth of information, and we're going to list graphically how people can find you and reach you and get your advice if they want to become I would say a co-partner in their own health with you. This has been fascinating, and unfortunately, this is only a 35-minute podcast, or else I would be asking you questions for like 35 hours straight.
Yeah,
So
I can
thank
answer 'em.
you. I know you can. I
Yeah.
believe that. This was fascinating, and I feel in a way we really only got a chance to touch the surface. But I would say, honestly, sometimes the most hackneyed phrases like, you are what you eat, are hackneyed and overused because they're actually true and we should take them seriously. Jason Teichner, thank you so much. This was fascinating.
It's my pleasure, Diane. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.